Alright, now that you've disassembled your SlimFit boiler and you've moved it into place, now we will begin the reassembling of, step by step of all the components that you've may or may not have seen us take off in the previous video. Step one, we'll be starting with the blower and venturi and air inlet tube. And go ahead and just install it onto the studs. Grab the same 4 lock nuts that come off of it. Put the same lock nuts on there, 13 millimeters. And we will be using the 13 millimeter socket with wrench for the zero clearance areas. Beneficial for a deep well socket if you've got one, because in a normal socket the stud will bottom out before you get the nut all the way down. Now that I've got it on there, I'll begin tightening it. I'll start the tightening with the wrench. Alright, next step would be to refeed the gas line back through the hole that it come out of.
And this kind of requires 2 people?
Yeah,
especially because
so
of the
I can push it
clamp.
through, and the other person can lift up the U-bolt and help guide the gas pipe over the bracket that's in there through the gas pipe.
Slowly, hold on. Okay. Hold on. Okay. Perfect.
And just for further information, this is a left-handed boiler. If you have a right or left, the gas pipe will always be on the opposite side, just like it was when you got it. It'll be on the opposite side of the manifolds.
And the next step is now
This.
connecting the base.
Yep.
And the second person is needed to basically hold the fresh air intake so it doesn't stay in the way of the base.
Yeah, that's true. All right. Now we're just gonna feed those ears back into the. Just lift up and push, and it should slide right in there.
Yep.
And lower it down, and you might have to tap it as you lower it down to get it to go right on in there. Alright, once you get the this piece of frame into position, you'll now grab the 2 8 millimeter bolts with the washer, and you'll just get it started. Don't tighten it down all the way, because you're going to need to do some adjustments when connecting the gas arm to the venturi. So I'm just going to get these started like so. So you got some play if you need it. Then you'll grab the other set of bolts without the washers, and you'll proceed to insert into the bottom of the main frame, and you may need to slightly tug at the bottom towards you to help align that extra little tab with the brass insert that's on the bottom of the jacket, or frame, excuse me. Alright, same thing on the other side. You may need to pull or push to get it to line up. And you can kind of look down through this little open hole where you're going with it. You can see the brass insert just barely at the end there. And just run them down just like that. All right, now that you've got the frame semi-secure with the bolts and the gas line started with bolts, then you'll attach your gas arm to your venturi. You can use same screws or the same bolts that come off of it, and the gasket that was in between that union. Now I usually just get one in there. You may need to lift and push a little bit. That's why you left it loose. And I'll do that again. Start with another one. Seems to be one that's shorter than the rest of them.
I'm going to hold the unit in place.
Yeah, that too. Okay. All right. Now that you've got the bolt, the two bolts securing the bottom frame and the gas line, you'll grab your gasket that come in between the venturi and the gas arm and the 4 bolts and nuts that come with it. You may need to lift and push, and if you need a second set of hands to kind of hold the boiler steady.
Would it help if I pull the gas train towards me? No, not necessarily.
I usually just get one started, and then I'll work the other 3 in.
Are we on the 4th bolt now?
Yeah, just trying to get started.
So everything is still aligned?
Okay, once you get most of your bolts and nuts started, you can use the same 4mm Torx to tighten down a few of them to help you with the rest of them. And this has got a specific torque, just like the blower, except for this one, it's 6 Nm. There we go. Once you have the blue hose secured, then you'll come down to this flange of your gas pipe. Tighten these 2 bolts with the washers. 15 Nm. And from there you'll tighten the bolts on the bottom of the jacket frame to the same 15 Nm with your 13mm socket. Once you tighten one bolt to the one side of the frame, then you'll need to come over to the back or to the other side and tighten that one down as well. Same tool, same Newton meter. Once you finish with the frame and gas line reconnect with the bolts, you'll need to come down to this bottom side where the U-bolt is, and I just run up the nuts by hand so I don't have to crank on it forever and a day. And I'll use the 9/16 socket with a ratchet. I'll just tighten a little bit on each side at a time to try to make sure it's nice and even. You don't need to over tighten it, because you don't want to bend the bracket on the inside. So you just do it till it feels good and snug. Give the gas line a good shake. If it doesn't move, it's good. Alright, once you get the gas line and connected and tightened down, the next step is putting the top panel onto the boiler. But to ensure a more easier installation, we're going to do like a sectional breakdown, and I'm going to walk you through that. First, you want to take this top panel off, and it's just 4 sheet metal screws, 2 on each side. Just using the 5/16 socket. Once you get that untightened, you'll lift this panel up and out of the way. Alright, once you remove the top panel section right here, we're going to need to remove this ground wire that's attached to this bracket. I'm going to use the 1/4 socket. Just take out that one green screw. Once you remove the ground wire, then you're going to need to take these silver screws out. There's 5, and I'm going to be using a 7mm socket for these. And this is what's holding your brackets together. Once that's disconnected, we'll need to remove these 2 wires right here. Using just a normal flathead, you can just push these prongs back through the hole. If I can get it. There we go. Just be very careful not to break them. Okay. Now that you've got that all removed, we'll take these sections that we broke down in pieces and we'll install it back onto the boiler. Once you remove the 2 anchors from this bracket right here, you'll have to come over here to your air pressure switch and remove the prong wires that are attached to that, just to get them disconnected so you can move it freely. They just pull free, just like the lock temperature sensor, and there you have it. Alright, now that you've got your pieces disassembled from the top frame, you'll reinstall them piece by piece back on the boiler. I'm going to grab right here where the air box is. It's got 4 prongs sticking out the back side. It's always going to be the first and third. The first prong will be inserted into that hole. The second, or the third prong will go into the back hole, and it'll always slide down behind this this first section of the casting. Then you'll need to take your other sheet metal or other bracket coming in from the back side. Redo that. Then you'll need to take your other bracket and coming in from the front side of the air venturi. Just going to slide it through. Going through that first section and the second section that's hanging up from the heat exchanger. Alright, now that you've got your bracket, your two brackets all aligned, you'll need to put your 8mm bolts back through, and I'm just going to get them in there just to kind of hold it there. You don't have to tighten it down quite yet. You may need to lift and pull left to right to get it to kind of line all up in there. And now that this is here, then we can grab our second set. Both of them.
Both of them?
Yeah. We can grab our second set of brackets. Fit them together. Fit it down in there and do the same thing like we did in the front. You get the back brackets in and fit them just like you did in the front. And the same thing applies here. Just get them in there and just tighten them down to where they're holding but still loose, so you have a little play. Once you get here, then you can grab your top frame and set it down on top of here. Yeah, you'll still need to support it. Once you bring your top panel or top frame back over here and set it top of your brackets, this is where you'll need to grab your same silver screws or silver bolts that you took out. You'll need to insert them back through. Same thing applies to when you were doing the brackets on the bottom. Just all you need to do is just get them hand tight for now. Now you'll grab your posts and just insert the prong at the bottom into the slot of the frame.
And these corner posts, these two are interchangeable, they're the same.
Correct, they are. They are the exact same, so it doesn't matter which side you pair with which. Alright, now that you've tightened down your silver bolts. Then you're going to do your ground wire, and it's the same green bolt that you took out. You just insert it right there. Now that you've tightened down your ground wire to the top of your airbox mounting bracket, now we're going to tighten this bracket down. That's holding the frame to the top of the heat exchanger. We're going to be using the 13 millimeter socket, and here we go. There's 4 bolts, 2 on this bracket and 2 on this bracket.
What's the torque requirement?
I don't think it specifies really. You may need to give it a little lift to get your socket to clear under that bolt on top of the heat exchanger. Alright, next, once you get the mounting bracket secure, you're going to want to put back your panel, and it'll just drop right on in place. There you go. And tighten that down with your 4 sheet metal screws that come out of it. Ensuring that you leave a little bit of a gap. You don't want it to be completely snug between this frame and that panel, because you need to leave room for your hanging panels when you go to put them back on. Now that you've got your top mounting bracket tightened down to the top of the heat exchanger, you're going to want to reinsert the anchors that's holding your wire harnesses together that we had to remove from the backside. And then straight from there, we can come over here to our supply sensor, and we can reinsert the wire harness for that. And it just pushes straight in and clicks, and it's that easy. Then you come down to the bottom to the return, and it's the same thing. You just push that wire straight in, just clicks just like that. And then we'll move on to the flue sensor. Push it straight in, clicks, you're good. Once you hook the supply and return sensors back in, you'll hop over to this side. Go ahead and push in your flame sensor and reinsert your screw to the ground wire. It might be easier to go ahead and get your screw and washer together and push it in through the ground wire like that, then insert it into the hole and tighten it down. I've tried tons of times of trying to balance all of this on the end of my a bit or a screwdriver, and I drop it 70% of the time. Okay, now that that's all tight, we'll swing around the front. And go ahead and reconnect our air pressure switch. It's going to connect to this top little hose bar of the air box, and then this hose, the clear, is going to connect to your venturi on this black hose bar. It's 90 degree. If it's a 2 million BTU model, it will be a straight metal hose bar, but for the 5 section and 7 section, or 1 million and 1.5, it's going to be a 90 degree black plastic hose bar. Then you're going to grab your black hose and attach it to the bottom of the heat exchanger right here at this metal hose bar. Just push it straight on. Alright, you're just going to push your igniter straight on, and then you'll move to your this ground wire right here. Same thing from on the other side. Screw and washer through and push it into the hole, and then tighten it with the screwdriver. And from here, you're going to grab this wire harness right here that's labeled gas valve and gas pressure switch. And if you ever get confused and lost on which connection's going where, they are labeled in case you need to know. But we're going to make our connection right here at the gas valve. Same thing as all the other ones, just push until it clicks and you're good. And push until it clicks for your pressure switches. Now we're going to go around to the side and hook up our blower and grab the air line while we're over there. Okay, right here we have our power and our control to the blower. You just push it straight on in until it clicks. Same thing here, straight on in until it clicks. Then you'll grab your air inlet hose, and it's just going to come straight up. And it doesn't matter how you get it on there, because it can go on there any way. All you're doing is pushing it in, trying to clear these little T-handle pieces in between any one of these prongs or any one of these squares. You just push it straight up, and then you're going to twist it counterclockwise or clockwise, however you want it to get it to go on there, and it'll stay. Alright, once you get your air inlet connected and twisted and locked in place, you can check if you need to. We're going to go right here to our low water cutoff probe. Just unscrew the nut that you left on there. Put the wire through the stud and just screw it back. And like I said, I usually just get it hand tight, and I just push that wire around just to get it just an extra little. Alright, now that you've got your low water cutoff probe connected, you're going to take your flow switch and your flue pressure switch wires. You're going to feed them over top of your air box. So it's going to go over the air box to the left of the bracket. And their connections will go right here. The orange, which is your flue pressure switch, is going to go to the switch in the back. It doesn't matter which prong goes to which wire, just as long as you're doing it in the back. And then the purple, which is your flow, your minimum flow, is going to go out in the front. And the same thing applies. Then we'll go from here to our block sensor, temperature sensor, and it'll just come under the mixing tube and connect to your sensor right here on the front of the block. Same thing applies to your flue and minimum airflow. It doesn't matter which prong, just as long as they're both on there. That concludes the wiring hookup. Up to this point, you should have all of your wires and all your connections made. Now we will begin, just putting our doors back on. You'll start with your center Weil-McLain logo posts.
We have two identical pieces, so it doesn't really matter which one is in the front, which one is in the back.
Where they will go, though, is at this slot right before the break in your frame. You'll just stick your prong, just like on the posts before, and it's going to fit right in between these two screws here, your two sheet metal screws. You'll have to lift up and kind of guide it down as you're going down at the top at the same time. It might take you a time or two to get it to go in there. Alright, the trick to getting any one of these panels in, they're all about the same concept to get them in. You'll barely get that prong started, and you'll kind of come in high, and it's got a lip, and the gap that you left, it's going to just drop down at the top and at the bottom at the same time. This notch that's cut out in each one of them, that's going to fit in your corner, and that'll help you determine which one's the left side and which one's the right side. Same thing as the corner posts and your doors. The tab will fit inside the slot of the frame, and this one will go in the very, very, very far, very, very first slot. And same concept, you kind of barely get that bottom tab in there. And then slide it all down at one time. Once you get your other panels on, these standard panels, they're the same no matter what, so it doesn't matter where you put them. The only two difference are the one with the cutout in the middle, that will go obviously over the display, and the one that's got your sight glass, that'll go over where your manifolds are, because it's got a cutout to fit that through. But it's the same concept as the other panels. You'll get the bottom prongs in and come in, just drop it down all at one time.
Another benefit of those panels being interchangeable is that you can take the display, as Jeremy explained at the beginning, and you can put on this side of the boiler. And then when you have multiple boiler installations, you have a display side by side.
Yeah.
And it should be very simple.
There you go.
And now we have unit completely installed, back in place.
Yep.
So this completes our installation process, and as we said at the beginning, to disassemble the unit, it probably takes about 40-45 minutes, and then to assemble the unit back, it takes about an hour.
Yeah, I would say it's a rough estimation. Some might be able to do it faster than others, and obviously first timers that are going to be doing this, it might take a little longer.